TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donation. Shalom ve'erev tov, good evening. Welcome to our daily TV7 Israel News Bulletin, broadcast from Jerusalem. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu voices skepticism over prospects of a diplomatic outcome between the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran. U.S. Central Command completes the transport of 5,700 Islamic State male fighters from Syria to Iraqi custody. And Damascus International Book Fair showcases thousands of books promoting Jihad, the Muslim Brotherhood, and war against the West. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu returned to Israel this morning after his 42 hours visit to the United States, where the Israeli leader held extensive talks with U.S. President Donald Trump and his team on the latest vis-à-vis the Islamic Republic of Iran. Ahead of his departure from Washington, Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke about his visit, which he referred to as brief but important.
I have just concluded a brief but important visit to Washington, speaking with our great friend, President Trump. We share a very close, very genuine, and very candid connection. Naturally, the conversations focused on several topics, but primarily on the negotiations with Iran. The President believes that the Iranians have already learned who they are dealing with. He believes that the conditions he is creating, combined with the fact that they surely understand that they made a mistake last time by not reaching an agreement, may create the conditions for achieving a good deal. He wanted to hear my opinion. I will not hide from you that I expressed general skepticism regarding the nature of any agreement with Iran. However, I said that if an agreement is indeed reached, it must include the elements that are vital to us, to Israel, and in my opinion, not just to Israel. It is not only the nuclear issue, it is also the ballistic missiles and the Iranian proxies. This essentially summarized the conversation, though it also touched upon Gaza, the region as a whole, and other general matters. In any case, it was another conversation with a great friend of the State of Israel, the likes of whom we have never had.
It is interesting to know that while mid-air, the Prime Minister's office released a statement which announced that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would not return to the United States next week for the annual AIPAC conference and that he would deliver his remarks via teleconference. Separately, Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid also announced that he would not attend the AIPAC conference next week, and he too will deliver a filmed speech from afar. Meanwhile, at the White House, U.S. President Donald Trump rebuffed speculations as if Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had urged him to cease talks with the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Why does Prime Minister Netanyahu want you to stop negotiating with Iran?
You're saying stop entertaining, stop talking to them? Didn't say that, we didn't discuss that. I'll talk to them as long as I like, and we'll see if we can get a deal with them. And if we can't, we'll have to go to phase two. Phase two will be very tough for them. I'm not looking for that.
President Trump further praised the Israeli Prime Minister for being an excellent wartime Prime Minister, as he put it, and separately stressed the necessity for the Ayatollah regime to succumb to America's demands, or else it would become very traumatic. Moreover, if the Islamic Republic thought it could drag its feet, President Trump explicitly stated a timeline for negotiations.
We have to make a deal, otherwise it's going to be very traumatic. Very traumatic. I don't want that to happen, but we have to make a deal. They should have made a deal the first time, and they got Midnight Hammer instead. And this will be very traumatic for Iran if they don't make a deal. Look, if they don't make a deal, then it'll be a different story. But we had a very good meeting yesterday with Bibi Netanyahu, and he understands, but it's ultimately up to me. If the deal isn't a very fair deal and a very good deal with Iran, then it's going to be, I think, a very difficult time for them in the back. I guess over the next month, something like that. Yeah, it shouldn't take, I mean, it should happen quickly. They should agree very quickly.
It's worth pointing out that after U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed a Wall Street Journal report that the Pentagon prepares second aircraft carrier to deploy to the Middle East in a Truth Social post, a separate report by the New York Times revealed that the USS Gerald R. Ford carrier strike group will head to the Middle East, that it was not expected to return to its home port until late April or early May. The Ford, which is positioned roughly 8 days from the Central Command, or CENTCOM, Area of Responsibility, or AOR, will join the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group in the Persian Gulf as part of America's massive force buildup encircling the Islamic Republic of Iran. The expected positioning of the Ford Strike Group within striking distance from Iran, absent port calls along its route, is expected to take roughly 2 weeks' time. Turning to Syria, where U.S. Central Command announced that it had completed the orderly departure of U.S. forces from Al-Tanf garrison in Syria on February 11th as part of a deliberate and conditions-based transition by Combined Joint Task Force Operation Inherent Resolve. The move comes 10 months after the U.S. Department of War made an announcement in which U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth instructed the consolidation of U.S. forces in Syria. According to the April 18th statement, the consolidation reflects the significant steps we have made toward degrading ISIS's appeal and operational capability regionally and globally. Meanwhile, in its statement yesterday, CENTCOM Commander Admiral Bradford Cooper asserted, quote, U.S. forces remain positioned to respond to any ISIS threats that arise in the region as we support partner-led efforts to prevent the terrorist network's resurgence, while further noting that maintaining pressure on ISIS is essential to protecting the U.S. homeland and strengthening regional security. Meanwhile, immediately after CENTCOM's departure from the strategic Al-Tanf garrison, which is situated on the border triangle between Syria, Jordan, and Iraq, immediately triggered a takeover by the Syrian security forces as CENTCOM and Damascus coordinated the handover. In tandem, U.S. Central Command also announced that it had completed a 23-day transfer mission which began on January 21st and resulted in U.S. forces successfully transporting more than 5,700 adult male ISIS fighters from detention facilities in Syria to Iraqi custody. It is interesting to note, however, that the number of transferred ISIS fighters to Iraq is far lower than the 7,000 which CENTCOM initially announced it would transfer from Syria to Iraq. Nonetheless, TV7 did not receive an immediate answer as to why the number of Islamic State fighters transported to Iraq from Syria is far lower than initially intended. Turning to Damascus, where the new government is holding an international book fair this week, which, in contrast to years prior, showcases the most extreme Islamist and Wahhabist literature, with writers praising the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, and the Muslim Brotherhood sold en masse.
In the new Syria, it's a fair where no book is banned. There's no censorship of books. Books entered the Damascus International Fair through land and seaports without any censorship. This is a slogan adopted by the Ministry of Culture, no censorship of books. All books are permitted and displayed on the shelves, except for those that are at odds with civil peace and social cohesion, or that oppose and violate the constitutional declaration of the President of the Republic by glorifying the former regime, or that violate the values and customs of Syrian society.
A publisher at the Damascus Book Fair admitted that the teachings of the founders of the Muslim Brotherhood, for instance, were very popular among Syrians under the new regime, including the writings of Sayyid Qutb, who advocated violent, offensive jihad against the West in particular, and the realization of Islamist dominance around the world at large.
All the brothers to whom I distributed the books have run out of copies. I have a very large quantity of them. The demand is huge, not just 4 milestones, but all of Sayyid Qutb's works are in high demand.
The publisher, who seemed to be proud of promoting the radical Islamist literature, acknowledged that under the previous regime of Bashar al-Assad, those consuming the literature showcased in Damascus's International Book Fair would have landed in jail.
I have many friends who, when their homes were searched and these texts found, it was like their death certificate a death sentence. Many went to Tadmor prison.
The book fair attracted many school children and students in Syria who walked through the premise chanting jihadist proclamations, including those such as "Gaza is our motto," which refers to the path taken by the Islamist Hamas on October 7th of 2023 against Israel.
Gaza, Gaza. Gaza is our motto.
Books such as Al-Aqsa Flood and End to the Illusion, which promotes jihad against Israel, The Shadow Prince, which explains how to establish terror cells to penetrate the West and wage jihad, and Death, Slaughter, and Dead, which promotes sacrificing oneself for the purpose of advancing jihad, are among the thousands of books promoted at the Damascus International Book Fair, which was officially sponsored by the Damascus Ministry of Culture, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. Please keep the peace of Jerusalem and the redemption of Israel in your prayers. I'm Jonathan Hassan wishing you a Shabbat Shalom, and God willing, until our next update, Shalom from Jerusalem.